Hey, hello, I'm Kråkan, also known as Scarecrow, and welcome to Closet Movie Rambles, where I talk about old movies that I found in my closet while cleaning. This week's movie is Blade 2. It's an action movie from 2002. It's about 1 hour and 52 minutes long, starring Wesley Snipes, Chris Christopherson, and Norman Reedus. And the movie starts with the character Jared donating blood at a blood bank in Prague. And the administration informs him that he has this special kind of blood that is unique to him. But what Jared doesn't know is that this clinic is run by vampires. So they basically strap him down to a chair and try to extract blood from him. But he's not like any other normal kind of beings. He's actually a hybrid vampire. So he breaks out of his chains and kills the vampires, all of them, in front of the security cameras. And then cutting to Blade explaining to the audience, in this case, who he really is. He's called a Daywalker because he's half human, half vampire, and he has all of their strengths but none of their weaknesses, except the thirst for blood. So he uses this garlic serum to kind of suppress that urge. And he also explains that his mentor, Whistler, played by Chris, was captured by the vampire and turned into a vampire, and he has been hunting him for about 2 years or something. So we cut to this action scene where he basically is looking for Whisker, and he takes out some vampires on bikes, and the last one standing he kind of interrogates and kind of leads him to the vampire hideout where he gets let in. And he uses this interrogated vampire as a meat shield for the guns. And he basically takes the guys out because he's so badass, I guess. And then he tells the interrogated vampire, just, "I catch you later." And he lets him go. And this is a point which is a funny gag that basically runs through the whole movie. And then Blade goes into the basement and he finds these red pods. And in one of them is Whistler. So he frees Whistler and he says, "Let's go home." And that's exactly what he does. He goes home and he puts Whistler in a cell because he's actually turned into a vampire. So he uses his own garlic serum uses it on him to suppress the vampirism. So if this succeeds, Whistler would basically be human again and can withstand sunlight and the hunger, I guess. So he gets locked into a cell and gets the garlic serum injected into his arm, and he's left there until dawn. And Blade says, "If you haven't turned back until dawn, when the blinds go up, you're dead, basically." And Blade goes to his quarter and he has a flashback of the time 2 years ago when Whistler got bitten by a vampire. And he asks Blade to kill him basically before he turns, and Blade kind of refuses. And Whistler kind of says, "Give me the goddamn gun and leave, and just leave me." And then Blade kind of leaves, and you hear a gunshot sound, I guess. And that's the part of the deception of Whistler, because he didn't kill himself. That's what Blade thought all along. And then in the morning, Blade goes check on Whistler. And of course he's detoxed. He's not a vampire at this point. He's regained his human form, basically, or more or less human. And he kind of leaves. They leave the cell. And there's this other character played by Norman Reedus, Scud. And he's basically taken the place of Whistler as the mechanic in Blade's hideout. And so Whistler doesn't like him, this guy. Norman Reedus' character, Scud, always smokes, and he's impolite and kind of doesn't respect authority. He's kind of like this rebellious teen, I guess, or something like that. And Whistler kind of doesn't like him, so they argue about some modification to Blade's car and stuff, and they really don't like each other that much. And then there is a vampire attack on Blade's hideout. So there are two vampires that attack, and they are dressed up in they're fully dressed up in leather, so they won't be affected by the sunlight. And Blade kind of cues these kind of UV lights, and there's a fight starting, and they fight for a bit, and then one of the vampires just tells Blade to stop, and they turn off the UV lights, and they remove their masks, and they talk. So there are two characters, Nisa, which is a female vampire, and there is Assad, which is a male vampire. And they're basically been asked or trained to basically kill Blade from the start. But now they have a bigger problem. So they explain to Blade that they're supposed to... there's a new threat. And if he's willing, they will take him to the vampire headquarters and talk about it. So Blade goes to his quarters to pick up stuff, and he injects himself with the with this serum, his garlic serum. And then Nisa enters, and whenever you're ready, she says. And the next scene is them flying in on a chopper to the vampire HQ, and they get in there, both Scud, the Whistler, and Blade, and they get to talk to this elder called Eli Damaskinos, which is basically a vampire elder, and he explains that about Jared, that he's this hybrid vampire that kind of feeds on other vampires, and when he's done, he will come for Blade's precious humans. And Blade says something like vampirism is like a cancer, and then Eli explains that no, it's cancer with a purpose. And then Blade returns home to think about the whole thing. And then there is a group that kind of is picked to help him hunt down this Jared character. And this is basically a group that has been trained to find Blade and kill him. That was their main purpose. So they're kind of pissed that the higher ups at the vampire society has ordered them to like work with this one person that they were supposed to kill and destroy. So there's this one guy in this crew that is a real asshole to Blade, and Blade kind of teaches him a lesson. He puts this kind of detonator proximity, remote detonator kind of thing in the back of his neck, and if he does anything stupid, he will detonate it. So Blade, there's a lead, and the group kind of goes to this vampire nightclub, and they get in there, and Blade sees this vampire interrogator from the earlier in the movie, and the vampire kind of says, "Hey, I'm off. I'm gonna leave. I'm leaving. I was just leaving." And Blade kind of laughs at it, and the guy kind of runs off. And meanwhile, this is going on. Scud is having surveillance in the van and scoping out the place, and Whistler is on the roof. And Whistler also gave the vampire crew and Blade new weapons that they which would be proficient to fight these new kind of vampires. And Scud gave Blade these kind of blades that kind of, there's this kind of expansion gel, so if it gets injected into something, it swells up. So it was kind of this prototype weapon tested out on this Jared, because they don't really know what their weaknesses are or how strong these kind of vampires are. They just know that they will be an immediate threat in the future. But underneath the dance floor, the Reapers and Jared are waiting for him. And the group check out the club, and the Reapers attack Scud's surveillance van and cutting his power. And Whistler kind of leaves his post, and Scud leaves the van to check it out, and he gets chased back into the van by the Reapers. And then B finds Nisa being held hostage by Jared, and Nisa kind of kicks him, and he lets go, and Blade fires blank into his head with his gun, but it does little to no damage. And then Jared kind of just laughs at him, and then an all-out fight breaks out in the club, and the vampire guests kind of run for their lives, and there's this fight between the Reapers and the crew. And then Scud gets his power back in a van. He uses his UV lights to kill off the the Reapers on the roof. And then two of the crew vampires gets bitten by the Reapers. And Blade fights Jared, and he uses this injection thing that he got from Scud, but it doesn't really work. And so the fight continues until daylight comes, and then Jared kind of escapes. And then one of the crewmates that got bitten by the Reaper, he turns on him, and they kind of put him down, and they shoot him, and he's dead before he gets really kind of turned over to a Reaper, I guess. And then the vampire body is dead, but the Reaper kind of parasite isn't. So they destroy it by using sunlight. And there's this other vampire in the group, Lighthammer is called. He also got bitten, but he kind of hides the fact that he's been bitten from the others, which is kind of stupid, because when he turns, he's more or less a liability to the rest of them. And then Whistler appears, and he has located the entrance to their lair, basically. So he shows them the way there, and they find these Reaper is kind of stuck in the grain, because when Reapers don't get the blood that they need, their metabolism kind of slows down and they become weak. So they take some samples of it, and so they make some kind of pheromone kind of shot things so they can lure out the Reapers, which they will find useful later on. So they gear up and they'll leave at dawn, because that will be a good time for them to hunt the Reapers down. So Scud and Whistler makes UV grenades and bombs that they could use against them, because that's one of the things that the Reapers, they have more or less immunity to all the other weapons, but to direct sunlight there is no defense. So they go down to the Reapers' hideout and they split up. And at the moment when Whistler is alone with two vampires, they turn on him and they kick him down, basically. And Whistler activates the pheromone, drawing the Reapers to their location. And Lighthammer, one of the crew vampires that got bitten earlier, he turns to a Reaper and he attacks one of the other teammates and kills him, and hunts his best friend, the female vampire, up a ladder to the surface, and she pulls up the drain cover and gets flashed by the sun, and it kills them both. And then the UV bombs are armed, and then Blade saves Nisa from a group of Reapers, but Assad dies, and B uses a flashbang grenade to take the Reapers out, and Nisa kind of runs from the explosion. And the last survivors regroup, and B uses the pheromone on himself to draw the Reapers with him, tells the others to escape, basically. And they follow him, and Blade goes for the big bomb bag and detonates it, and basically killing the rest of them off. And then Jared finds Whistler, and he basically gives him a ring, and he tells the truth about Eli. And then Blade finds Nisa unconscious, so he uses some of his blood to basically save her, revive her. And then as he's doing this, Jared is watching from afar, and then Blade and Whistler gets tased. And then Nisa wakes up at her father's quarters at the vampire HQ, and Blade wakes up captured with Whistler and Scuds, and they have no gear and no defense against. They're surrounded in this by these snipers, and this like this battle arena kind of thing. And Ellie alley. The vampire elder anyway. He arrives and Whistler tells Blade the truth that the Reapers were not mutated, they were actually made by Eli. And he throws the ring at the feet of Eli, and Nisa picks it up, and she kind of realizes, why would Jared have our family ring or something like that? This is a family heirloom. And they realize that Jared is actually the son of Eli, and so is Nisa, and Nisa storms out of the building. So Blade and Whistler gets kicked down, and Scud tells him that basically he's been working with the enemy from the beginning. And then the bad guy vampire, basically picks out the detonator from his skull and the Scud kind of tells Blade that it was a dud. And Blade says it's not a dud, and he detonates it, and Scud turns into a vapor of blood and flesh chunks. And then Blade gets tased again and gets taken to a machine to drain his Daywalker blood, because it's useful to make the Reaper hybrids immune to sunlight. And then Whisker gets handcuffed and beaten down, but he picks his handcuffs basically behind his back. And then Nisa argues with her father. And then Jared wants revenge, so he attacks the vampire HQ head on and convert the vampires into Reapers, or basically just drain them of their blood. And then Whistler gets loose and he kicks the ass of the bad guy vampire, and he basically goes and crawls and frees Blade from this kind of machine. And Jared chases after Nisa and Eli. And Blade is so weak at this point, so that he drops into a pool of blood, which is conveniently located, and he gets this superpower. He gets superpowered OP by this blood, because he normally doesn't drink blood, so he gets stronger, faster, and everything, and his wounds are healed and everything. And he fights this other badass vampire, or he's about to fight him, and the bad guy vampire is about to use Blade's sword against him, and he kind of makes this cut, and Blade kind of catches with his palms like this, and he kind of holds it, and he kind of twists the blade and flips it and cuts the guy in half. And then the embryos of the experiment, of the Reaper experiments, is destroyed by Whistler, and the Nisa traps Eli himself and Jared in this room, and they're basically, Jared kills off his father, and then he kind of goes for Nisa, and then Blade enters the room, and there is a fight between Jared and Blade, and the Blade's blade breaks, and the Blade uses the left sharp end of it to basically destroy Jared. Well, actually, it's Jared himself who takes his own life. And Nisa doesn't want to become a Reaper, so she asks Blade for one of his last favors. She wants to see the sun again. So Blade takes her out to the helipad, and the sun rises, and she vaporizes into ashes, basically. And meanwhile, this is happening. Whistler is watching all of this, and then cutting to London for the last scene. The interrogated vampire from the beginning of the movie is going to one of those peep shows, one of those strip joints. You basically pay money to watch naked girls, basically. And he tells the shop owner, are the ladies or are the girls alive? And the last time I checked, the owner says they were. And he kind of smiles, and he goes in there and goes into one of these booths, and the slider kind of opens, and Blade stand there with his long sword, and he just said, you know, you think I'll forget about you, and then he kills up the guy, and that's how the movie ends. So, can I recommend this movie? Yes, absolutely. It's just, it didn't come across when I was talking about the movie. I just kind of went up and down the list, basically reading it off like that. But there's a lot of good action scenes, a lot of close quarter combat, a lot of jiu-jitsu, kung fu, street fighting, boxing, all these kind of martial arts that Blade or Wesley Snipes uses. They're kind of impressive, kind of fast, and the character Blade is actually part of the Marvel universe. It was a comic book character created, and I think Wesley Snipes actually does the character really good. So yeah, I can recommend this movie. Absolutely. If it's on TV, have a look at it, have a watch. Yeah, and thanks for watching, and have a good day. Have a great day.